Hello, Sophie. I am so excited and grateful that you accepted to have this call with me and to just share a little bit about your work that I actually think is really relevant to the Clean Slate to Create group.
Hello, and Marija, thank you for having me. I first always love talking to you, and secondly, reaching out to people is my passion. So
cool. So just for everybody who is listening to the call, I know you as my teacher. You've been my coach because you've done different types of work, and you've been my coach, my leader, and are currently my teacher, my wisdom teacher and trainer. So that's how I see you. How would you introduce yourself to the other people so that they know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
What there is to know about me is that I have a passion, an irresistible passion to create a new culture for humankind. And it's not something to create, out of any need or any fixing anything wrong. It is this experience of going with evolution. And I think we're shifting from the world of the ego to the world of being connected to the spiritual expressed in our world. And that new culture for humankind is one of being for each other, caring. And the reason for that is that people will get an education that we are all one. So you will not destroy each other anymore. And where we are at now is a lot of conflict. So I started that passion when I was very young. I had one of those gifts, when I was 12 years old and I had a gift. I can't describe it any other way, where, it's very much like when you download a program on your computer. It's just, I suddenly got that everything I was seeing and everything I was experiencing was an illusion. So since then, I've been a seeker. I call myself, in fact, a spiritual shopper. I learn and keep elevating my consciousness. So that, and I've been doing it as a work for 30 years. So I'm passionate about it. I love it. I breathe it. I think awareness is the ultimate power, that everybody should practice awareness. And that's the best way to describe me.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you. Couldn't help myself as you were talking, right? Given everything that is happening in the world, it's not, first of all, there's a pandemic, there's Black Lives Matter movement, there is environmental crisis. People are dealing with some really real circumstances. Part of the reason I've actually even created Clean Slate was to just kind of declutter a little bit of space so people can breathe, so people can get in touch with the gift that you say you discovered when you were 12. So how would you tie in the work that you're doing? How is it relevant to an individual right now? And how is it relevant to the, not how is it relevant, but is that work, how will that work help people with the pain and the suffering that is present today in the world that we're living in?
So we are going through a systemic crisis, a global systemic crisis. So whatever level you're looking at, it's breaking down. Now, what's interesting is in Chinese, crisis means problem and opportunity. The two meanings are in the one word, right? So when and why we're having a global systemic crisis, and that seems to accelerate, it's because of evolution, right? When the reign of the ego, the Homo sapiens, comes to an end, you need to give birth to a new species, Homo spiritus. So as you know, because you have children, births never happen without pain, right?
No.
So the system needs to break down so there is a space for a new one to arise. So the first thing is, as terrible as it is, terribly difficult as it is, don't make it wrong. You cannot resist evolution. So now we have a choice, right? So it actually might even be just quite an extraordinary time to be alive if you choose a side of opportunity in the crisis, not the side of problem and resistance, right? So how can you turn what is happening in an opportunity? Well, the only way is up. Up meaning elevation of consciousness, because the material world, we have so much technology and we have so much means that if we do not wake up and connect to the spiritual, we're going to blow ourselves up. I mean, we have, before in the 12th century, 14th century, 16th century, you had crisis, but we didn't have that technology. Mm-hmm. Now we do, right? So now it's danger time. We are either going to be an extinct species that we would have blown ourselves out of life, or we're going to elevate, and I believe we will elevate. And so what do I do to participate in this elevation, right? I train people in awareness. We are not educated. It is so simple, right? Awareness is, you teach your children awareness. When you teach your children to cross the street, you say, stop, look right, look left, and then you move forward. Okay, that is exactly what awareness is. Stop, look, and then take action. And what does that allow? It allows to examine and educate yourself on everything you identify with that is an illusion. Until you connect to who you really are. And when you connect to who you really are, Marija, as you very well know, there is this alignment, right? This a knowing that is way beyond intellectual knowing. It is, you don't need to prove it, you don't need to explain it, you don't need to justify it, you're home. And then you look at expressing who you really are on the material plane as a game, as a mission, as a game of life. So you are able to dance with what is happening and be useful.
Yeah.
So that's what I provide.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Now, I have a benefit of having gone through your program. And so I know firsthand what you're talking about and what it's like to shift from being an overachiever or whatever is our personal mechanism of survival and how, like, who we are known as in a world, to being somebody who's in alignment and then having actions come from there in alignment. But what would you say to people who haven't done, maybe have done some transformational work, but are not, have not seen you before, don't know you, don't know this work, are probably maybe even arguing that they are aware. And then when you mention ego as well, which, I hope you actually define, you've said it, but define it even more clearly, because sometimes some people think they don't have the ego. So what would you say to people who feel right now so out of sorts, so like with no capacity to just make that next step? How important is this? Where would they look? How would they look? I mean, what would your recommendation be?
Well, it's different for everybody, right? There is one energy in the world that has people move. There is a very, very specific energy that if you resist elevation, the elevation of consciousness, that energy intervenes and pushes you to elevate. And that's called suffering. So when you suffer, you get to move on to stop suffering, right? But here's the thing, is that, so I'm not making suffering wrong. There are some people that has an enormous tolerance for suffering, and they will suffer a lot until they say, okay, is there something else? Okay. But if you are listening and you do not have a high tolerance for suffering, and you would like to live a life where you have recaptured your free will, you are fully expressed, and you have the experience of wholeness and completeness, then you need to do the work that is necessary to get to that point. It's not going to fall on you. You know, very, very few people have the gift of instant enlightenment. You know, there is like Eckhart Tolle had it, Byron Katie had it. Yeah, which
so I heard good for them.
Well, I am so happy for them. And frankly, I would even tolerate having a cockroach on my foot if that gave me enlightenment, which is what happened to Byron Katie. And I don't like cockroaches. But for most of us, we're not doing this, we don't have this gift, right? We have to take one step at a time and climb the mountain.
Yeah.
So I would say to people, please don't wait until you're desperate. Why would you wait until you're desperate? If you're really well, do it. If you're medium well, do it. And if you're not well at all, definitely do it, right? But just take charge of your life. There is nothing to lose. You won't be stuck with anything. And if you know, and they know you, Marija, right? Somebody that recommends it, just listen as a message from the universe to step into it and do what you need to do to grab all the authentic power you can so that you can weather the systemic crisis. But more than weather it, you can turn it into an opportunity. You know, we were 30 on my last course, right? And the joy for me is that there is now 30 people that are bloody useful, that are in the whirlwind we're going through. There are 30 people that are now grounded, aligned, and are on a purpose and a mission that with joy. So it is possible even during those times.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, you're so right. I actually, part of the reason I even wanted you to do this call with me, because I find this time where we're so restricted. There's physical restriction unless you're rule breaker, but there's physical restrictions. Like, you know, you can't, you know, my son is doing school remotely. We work from home. There's no gatherings. There's all this stuff in place. And if not now, when? I mean, it's almost like the universe has created a bit of space. So for me,
well, more than that, it's more that the universe said, go to your bedroom and start thinking consciously. We're all locked into our apartment. I know.
Totally. And it's, you know, it's funny because I know for me, I'm noticing this daily, you know, this just ego of mine that wants to achieve something. And then under, like, seeing all the barriers, and then, you know, just bringing awareness to it, as you said, time and time again. And then something literally shifts, and it's almost like as if I arrived newly to the moment. So I honestly think that this is the best time to do something like this, if people, you know, have, or actually make time and make way to do it. So given that that's my experience.
Marija, there is, in life, you never stay still, not on the material life, right? It's always movement, constant change. So you're either going to expand or you're going to contract. You're not going to stay still. So the tendency in time of crisis is to protect and wait. No, don't do that. Just expand. That is you need to step into the risk of the moment and make it yours. Yeah.
Yes. So tell us how does this work of your works? I know I was the first course. I mean, you've done this with people one-on-one, but you have done the course this summer. Now it's slightly different. And can you just tell, like, what is an actual process? I mean, how does one practice awareness? How does one live in alignment rather than by default? And then just tell us, like, where can people find you? I'll make sure I'll post all the website and the places, but here you tell us your experience first.
First, let me tell you what the course is about, right? So the way to to start to practice awareness is to deconstruct your ego, right? So here's the good news. We constructed our ego. So if we constructed it, we can deconstruct it. So the first thing you get is, what is the ego? Because most people think the ego is being arrogant or self-righteous, or no, not at all. Yeah. The ego is everything you identify with that is not you. So you can identify with being a mother, a wife, a teacher, with your amount of money, with your age, your weight, your nationality. You can identify with everything which is not you. But the moment you identify, you create this trap. And that's where the suffering arises, right? So the course is entirely designed to deconstruct your ego. So there is, you look at your life like a play. There is a genre to the play. There is a main character to the play. There is a main character relationship to the supporting cast. There is a main character relationship to life. That's a script. There is a theater you give your play in. So I've made it really fun and very easily more than understood. The people recognize and finally get clarity and get to the source of their life. You know, it's when you get it, you understand even the circumstances you have and why you have the people you have in your life and why it feels like Groundhog Day, right? So that is the course. That's the first course. And everybody must do that before they can go on. Then if people are interested to go on, there is another course called the Remembrance Method, where you practice a spiritual life. And then if you want to practice some more, there is another course called the Mastery of Life, where you practice bringing awareness to every single area of your life, like money, sex, relationships, fear, and that anxiety. We cover every topic of life so that you can practice what it means to be aligned in this topic. And then the last course of the 4-part curriculum is for people that wants to use my method professionally. So that's how I designed the course. So the first one, though, is the only one everybody must think about. It's called the Curtain Call Method course. Curtain call, like, you know, at the theater, it's a curtain call. That's it. It's finished. The play is over. That's the play of your unconscious ego is over. And it starts on September 22nd. It's 12 sessions of 2 hours. And you will end the course connected to who you really are and having created a conscious ego, because you do need an ego to go through this life. Except if you're a monk in an ashram or on top of the Himalaya, meditating and not talking to anybody, you do need an ego. But there is an enormous difference between an unconscious ego and a conscious ego. Enormous. Mm-hmm. And that's where you end the first course, with a conscious ego.
Beautiful. I think the one thing that, because you mentioned it, I would love to for you to say to people, because you said all the things that we identify with is not who we really are. So who are we then, really?
Well, you know, who we are is, in all my experience, right, and I led to over 80,000 people and worked with, well, all those people. I think it's 75 or 80% of the world population believe we have a soul. Nobody talks about it. Who you really are is your soul. Now, here's what's difficult about it, Marija, is that you can't talk about your soul. You can't use any of your 5 senses to imagine or smell, touch, or you can't use language to talk about your soul. Why? Because the soul is located in another dimension than the material, and it's way beyond the 5 senses. And it's like an essence, a whiff of a perfume. Okay? But inside of the course, you actually get the experience of who you are. And then we do the work to put it in language, knowing that it reduces it a little bit, but it's very intimate, very personal. You then have that relationship forever. You know exactly who you are, and your character on this material plane becomes just an avatar to serve your soul intention.
It's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. And it just gives a whole new meaning to the conscious ego, because you get to create it. And, you know, I for me, immediately reminds me of how many times even my son changes the avatar on Netflix and Hulu and all the other stuff that we have. It's just really, they don't stick.
Well, you know, that's what children do. Do you know how many characters the children can play? And do you know why they love playing so much? It's because one moment they're Superman, that afternoon they can become an Indian and with a feather in their hair, and then the next time they can become a doctor. And every single time they choose those characters, they play them fully. So they're having a total blast. And they still are malleable. And then we grow up and forget about playing character. We now think that we're stuck in one character. No more play. The play is out of the window.
Yeah.
So you can recapture your joy, the joy there was being a child.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I mean, it's almost as if you complete who you've been on a material world. You widen the context to include the spiritual. And then from there you can create, which is really powerful, because it's really difficult to watch the news and be informed by what's happening in the world and not be daunted at best and feel a little heavy with that. So
yeah, well, it is the mood of the world at the moment is one of heaviness, right? So you can't, you will be, everybody, you will be impacted by it. The way is not to resist it. The overall mood, the global mood is heaviness. So you need to surrender to that. And if you can welcome the whole of the symphony of life, you know, during a symphony, there is flat notes sometimes, or there is, well, it's not a very good symphony, but even the flat notes are part of the symphony of life. There is instruments you don't like as much as others, right? And there is even some symphony you don't like as much as others. The game is to embrace the whole of the symphony of life. That's called wisdom.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm going to include in the writing where people can find you. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for just giving your time to share a little bit about this. I know you do a lot of free calls. There's a lot of videos on your website. The YouTube is filled with ton of videos you did on this subject. So I hope people check it out and, you know, hopefully also register for the course, because to me, this is an ultimate clean slate to create, because you really get almost like a new opportunity to rebirth yourself.
Yeah, Marija, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me reach out to your group. I appreciate it, and I cherish our relationship.
Thank you.